In this video, we're going to create the JavaScript Ajax creation ability. So right here, when we click create, we'll type something in and it will insert it into the database. So make sure you have your database open, and I'm using Heidi SQL here. And let's go to the to-do table and the data tab. And right now it's empty, but we're going to get that populated. So the first thing is to make sure we have a controller that posts the data. So I'll open up API and I'll head over to create note. And we always want the user to be logged in, so we're going to put the code below here. And what we're going to do is a database query. So we'll start with result equals this db insert. We're going to insert it into to do. And we'll make an array, and it's going to have content, because in the database we have a content field and a user ID field. Now in the table, this completed item, the default is 0, so we don't need to monkey with that. So content and user ID. So for content, we'll do this input post content, comma. And for the user ID, we'll say this session user data user ID. Okay, so that'll insert it, but we want to make sure it succeeds, so we're going to say if result. We'll do another output, so I'll say this output set output, and we'll do a JSON encode of result of 1. And I'm just going to return false, so nothing here executes. And if it fails, we'll just throw this down here and say result 0. Okay? And we're also going to want to validate the data with a form validator. So let's do a this form validation set rules, and we only need to validate content. So that's the name. Here's the appearance of the error. You just have to do that even though we're not going to be using it. And our rules. So the first rule is going to be required, and let's say a max length of 255. Now when it's required, that means it can't be empty, so there would have to be at least one value in there. So we wouldn't need a min length. And then we'll run the form validator. We'll say if this form validation run is false, we can just copy one of these outputs and paste it here. And let's return false, and we'll say this form validation error array, and we want to pop this guy into the array here. So I'll put these on separate lines, and I'll say error, and I'll cut this guy here. There we go. Okay, now to the JavaScript part. Let's go to our public folder, JS junior dash dashboard, and this is going to be an event. So go to your event and down to create to do. So when create to do is clicked, it's a form. So let's take a look at it. I'll open up the console tool with Control-Shift-I or Control-Shift-C, and with the little inspector I'll look at this, and the action has the URL we want to post to, and the item we want is content, but we'll just serialize the form and that'll get everything in there. It's easier to do that way in my opinion. So we'll say var URL equals this attribute action, and this refers to the form. Okay, and then var post data equals this serialize. Then we'll say $.post, that's jQuery's post method, URL, post data, and then the callback function O. And the way we access what comes back is with the variable we set in here. And I want this to come back as JSON data, so I'll say comma JSON. And in here I'll say if result, O.result equals 1, else. And if you're wondering where I got this O result, if I go to the API, here's result that's getting outputted in every one of these. But if there's an error, we might as well add one to this one as well since it's an error. I'll say error, could not insert record. Okay, back here. And what we're going to do is use our result class. So I'll say result.error, and this one will be result.success. I'll get rid of this console log. So let's test it out. I'm going to open my console up again and go to my network tab, and I'll just refresh the page since we have new JavaScript. Looks like I have to re-log in, admin. Okay, so create. And it didn't do what we wanted. It looks like I may have forgot a string. We want to do, oops, let me change this to E. I called all those EVT. So EVT.prevent default. That will prevent the form from doing what it's normally used to doing. Refresh the page, create, network. Let's see. Let's look at the headers. So the form data content is empty, and our response is nothing. So something went a little funny. Let's try typing something in. Test, no response, yet it was okay, and it got the form data posted there. So we do the form validation, and we output this data if it fails, so that should show up. This outputs and this outputs. So it's kind of strange why it's happening. Well, it's actually not strange at all because I'm in the wrong function here under create note. So I'll just cut this and go to create to do and paste it in here. Okay, and let me try again. Refresh, create, and the response, good. Let's try it just with some letters in there, and it says success. Now we can look at our database, the data, and refresh. Excellent. The user ID and the content is in there. So let me go back. Now what I'm going to want to do is actually improve on the result. So we'll do that in the next video, but that's it for creating.